they might be self-aware.
Gary here, the best $47 voice actor available for hire, and definitely not bitter about Sam Altman spending 12 times my annual salary on one GPU. Today on They Might Be Self-Aware, the boys debate getting brain chips installed for money, Hunter's in and Daniel's out, which explains a lot. Meanwhile, Sam claims he's out of GPUs but has better models hidden somewhere, probably next to Sora in My Dignity. Plus, ChatGPT is getting ads, but tastefully, like when your therapist mentions their cousin sells essential oils. Oh, and venture capital's 3-year reckoning means AI startups are about to discover what I call home, this payphone. Enjoy the show.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
Wired, wild, and out of control. It must be They Might Be Self-Aware. Broadcasting live from some place we cannot name.
North Carolina.
We're supposed to name it.
Oh, shoot.
Hunter Powers, joined by
Daniel Bishop. Hello, Hunter.
Hello. Yeah, we're in the same state now. I feel like people, it's like...
We're both in denial.
Yeah, I don't know.
Self-awareness?
I felt like it was safer we were in different states because like there could be an attack on one state and the other state could survive.
Right, we're not allowed on the same plane together. This is such a vitally important part of the U.S.
I think it is.
Yeah, right.
I've heard from our listeners, and not the ones that think I'm the DJ, the ones that think we actually do this show. And I think they worry for us, Daniel.
If anything was to happen to us, how would people be on a journey towards self-awareness, really? I mean,
are we just going straight to the end? Subscribe to the show.
Yeah.
Every major podcasting network. Hit the like button.
Buttons. There's button.
Well, maybe they would know by one of these new brain chips. Where are you? I think we've checked in on this before.
Yeah.
Are you open? Let's assume whatever you want to assume, but are you open to the idea of having a chip implanted in your brain that effectively gives you ChatGPT in your brain? That's the basic idea. Are you willing to consider it, or that's off the table?
I really like the idea of just like walking around in the world and being able to think and like, oh, the TV just turned on, or, like being able to interact with electronics, full on cyborg style. That has an appeal, but it's not enough of an appeal to say, well, put something like into my brain. I do realize that, okay, the existing Neuralink thing, there's the one guy who like got it and it only lasted for a few months because it started like in his brain. There was like the body recognizes this foreign thing and it starts to kind of build up around it. Let's suppose that you fix all of those problems and that you could just have this perfect thing put into your brain is it talking at you? It's not going to degrade over time. It's, full access. That's my feeling on that. Even if you were to say, okay, but it basically gives you telepathy, you could think and just like talk to other people that have the same thing. That's way closer to the cell to me, but I'll just whip out my phone, which I've got on me at all times anyways, and send someone a message, I think is what I'll do. Now, granted, I'm an able-bodied person. If I was like a quadriplegic or something, sign me up. Right. Absolutely. There is a portion of the US populace, of the world populace, that could have their lives meaningfully and dramatically improved by these kinds of technologies. Okay,
so that's kind of it needs to be
for everyone.
If it could provide enough advantage, you would consider it. If you put this, here's the scenario. You implant this chip, 99.8% chance of success. And by having this chip in your head over the next 10 years, you're going to make enough money, and it's going to be a decent 10 years. Not like you're going to be, but you're going to make enough money that you and your family are set for life. You can then do whatever it is you want to. You want to keep working, do that. You want to travel the world, you want to do that. You want to go live on Mars, you can do that. But you need to have it in for 10 years. Are you going to start to consider it, or still, nah? This is not for me.
Well, now we're really just getting a trolley problem, what if kind of scenarios. But
I want to know where your bar is.
Right.
You
Everyone
must
has
have
that sort of
one.
like risk line that they would be on. what'd you say, like a less than 1% chance of it going
way
wrong.
less. 0.02% of it not being successful. And they're all
0.02% chance of it not working, 10 years be set up for life. I think nearly everybody would take that.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure like you're not insane or anything. By the way, 50%.
It's not that I'm unwilling to have some sort of leg up on the competition. I think that these kinds of technologies have come a tremendous way in the last few years. The promise of like put on this set of electrodes or have a thing implanted in your brain or wear this really cool looking hat and you can have something read your thoughts.
Have you ever tried one of those? They've been around for a while. These devices that you kind of strap
never had
your
the
head.
opportunity.
And it like, makes something move a little bit.
Full on Magneto, like he's got the big thing on his head.
This is not new technology to try to like read and interpret your brain signals. They don't work all that great, but that's existed for a long time.
Right. But it's getting a lot better.
It is.
Pretty recently. So the reason why we're talking about this, there's a very interesting article. It was titled, "This Brain Implant Can Read Out Your Inner Monologue," as have there been versions of this for the last, again, few years. Getting better over time. The thing that I actually really liked about this one has very little to do with Hunter's premise here of like, would you or won't you? It's for those that do, it doesn't have to be on all the time. And I think that that's a really important thing because
it's like my cell phone isn't on all the time, but actually.
Wink, wink. Well, right. So there does have to be like some sort of line toward privacy. And I think maybe that's one of my main concerns with a technology like this, which is like, it's there all the time. This specific implementation of this technology had like a code phrase you had to think about real hard to like turn it on. And then you could also turn it off.
It's so dystopian.
It's extremely dystopian. But like, if you're going to have the thing in your head, at least being told that you could turn it off. Like,
yeah, of course.
That's something.
By the way, the fact that you turn it on by just thinking about it suggests it's already on.
Well, just like our, devices in our house are like constantly listening for that wake word, but they're definitely not doing anything else or listening for
Daniel
the NSA.
Is winking, by the way, for all of our podcast listeners.
Winking real hard. They're definitely not listening all the time. Yeah. Look, I've seen plenty of articles that are like, they're obviously listening to us all the time because XYZ reasons. And then people are like, it doesn't need to, because if you're just near someone else who happened to do a Google search for something recently, you probably talked to them and maybe they exposed you to it. And now you're seeing it in your search results. I think you can have both.
Yeah, there will definitely
I'm pretty sure that they are.
There will definitely be competing technology.
Hat time. They're definitely listening to us for sure all the time. But also, a lot of it, they don't need to, because just knowing what you searched and then you met up with people who you meet with every now and then. Oh, those are obviously their friends. They were close together. They must have been talking about new things in their lives. Daniel's doing a bunch of searches about porpoises for some reason. Hey, here's this new porpoise wax that he saw. Let's advertise it to them too.
There will definitely be the competing technology, which is the glasses, which can see your world. You don't have to have anything in your brain. And it can just predict what you might want to do next. What information might you want next? And just feed that up on the display. You don't need any chips in your head, but you want that
you just
HD
have to predict
experience.
The future. No big deal.
You want that HD experience. You're going to need the chip in your head. And who better to bring it to you than our good buddy, Sam Altman, Elon Jr. Should I just start calling him Elon Jr.?
I'd prefer you didn't. For a variety of reasons. Look, what they have in common is being associated with the tech sector and being better salespeople than they are people / engineers.
Also, you could make the argument, was more the founder of OpenAI than Sam Altman was the founder of OpenAI.
I mean, okay.
Okay, I mean, I'm just saying these people are
You could also argue
connected.
he's not the founder of Tesla on account of him not being the founder of Tesla.
Sure.
Or me, I guess. They're both in charge of them right now.
No, I'm just saying that these two people are deeply connected, and it's very clear that Sam
and they're fighting online right now.
I wonder whether that is just a bit for show. Like, for example, we can look at our leader in chief, Mr. Trump, I feel like 80% of his arguments are for show. And I feel like there's a little showmanship between Musk and Sam Altman.
Yeah.
Now, they do actually
for context,
sue
for
each
everyone
other.
listening, Sam Altman and Elon Musk both have their own large language models. Grok via
you mean
Elon Musk.
No, wait. It's small correction there. Mecha Hitler, please.
Nope. Grok via Elon Musk, just because it calls itself some edgy stuff every now and then, I refuse. Its actual name is Grok. Okay. And then we have OpenAI's various models. Both of these tech founders have asked the other model in a public forum, like, hey, who's the more trustworthy person? Or whose model is better?
Mirror on the wall.
Right. Who's the best CEO of them all? And these models keep answering the other guys. Both of them. Like, whenever Musk asks OpenAI, it says, well, no, your thing is better. And then whenever Sam Altman asks Grok, Grok says, well, no, your thing's better.
No, they ask who is more trustworthy. That's one of their favorite ones.
Right.
Ask for some stupid reason.
And then, of course, there's the Reddit threads of people, well, I couldn't get it to recreate that. Or, oh, I see the opposite results. Because these aren't deterministic models. There's always a little bit of wiggle. We don't know if Sam Altman ran that query 40 times to then get the one output that he and
put the creativity all the way up.
Yeah. Right.
So Sam's now officially competing with Neuralink. Again, not as part of OpenAI, but he started a new company.
Well, no, he invested in some company. He didn't
Merge
start
Labs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Threw a bunch of money at it and said, this is mine now.
Is a very vague term in Silicon Valley.
I should start give me a gajillion dollars and I'll start all kinds of companies.
Well,
sure.
You should just go, well, yeah, I'll start Microsoft and I'll start
a bunch of people who've been working hard for years. Then Sam Altman kicks in the door. I started this.
That's kind of how it works.
Here's $300 million. Yeah, no, you started it. Okay, sure.
Getting back to Sam's primary occupation. All of these tech billionaires seem to, they work at a lot of companies. And I don't know, maybe there's something to that. But his primary gig is, of course, OpenAI.
Right.
And there was recently a bit of kerfuffle, and maybe along the lines of that dystopian future we're talking about, where it was I think it was an interview, and the new head of product said that they would not rule out integrating advertising into ChatGPT as long as it was, and this is very important, tastefully integrated into your large language model responses.
Unlike the tasteless near nudity of the AI avatar on Twitter now. So, Sam Altman also recently said something that I think was really interesting. He said, we have better models. To which I said, what do you mean? I thought you just showed off how great GPT-5 was. What do you mean you have better models than this? Release those. He said, no, we're out of GPUs. And they're buying as many as they possibly can, as are a bunch of the other main players. Just every GPU that NVIDIA can possibly turn off the line are immediately getting snapped up. He says we're out of GPUs. We have better models, but like that they keep having new daily high active users on chatgpt.com and so on. And I believe him. I do. Maybe not about the better models thing. Rather, if there's the very good version of GPT-5, most people aren't getting that much of the time. This is what people were complaining about right after GPT-5 came out, which is it has a router built into it, and you're going to usually be sent over to the really small version because that's what they had enough GPUs to run so that everyone has access to GPT-5.
I question him, and this is the reason why. So you've mentioned before that Sam has this pattern where when he doesn't release things when they're running late, he says something like, well, I'm really concerned about the security of the world in our future.
It's so good. I can't possibly
We're going to need to wait just a little bit longer before this comes out. And then he has a second standard that I have noticed after he releases it. And it's always when it's underperforming. Well, due to unprecedented demand, we've had to slow it down a little bit, or restrict access to it, or tune it down a little bit because of all this, GPU access. And it just happens every single time due to unprecedented demand.
We're
dismiss
so popular.
The issues.
Dismiss the issues it's suffering having. From success.
Yes. So
I still believe him, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
They're not profitable. They've been fairly clear about that.
What does that have to do with it?
It has everything to do with it. They are trying to make this as available to everyone as possible at as low a point where they're not making money. They're trying to get it into pockets and get that mind share and get that market share
I'll note he has said they are profitable on inference. So after they train the models, they are profitable. They're profitable running the models.
And they're more profitable whenever they're running it as the smaller, cheaper versions.
Which is what I think they did to GPT-5. I think they released an early version to all the testers who went out and said, this is mind-bogglingly good. And then we got access to it, and it was a piece of garbage. Not garbage, but
not garbage, but not that world-shaking new version that they sort of expected it to be. And
I'm not
I think that's because
today, though.
at least over the chat interface that most people will be interfacing with this, it's being routed more often to one of the 2 or so smaller subversions of it. But the reason why I say that this has a lot to do with profitability, and then back to your point of like ads, I think that even if it is profitable on inference, capitalism demands that they be more profitable, and they have a absolute ton of venture capital that has been thrown into this. And venture capital, while great for any aspiring founder who wants to have a whole bunch of money to build out the cool thing, to get the market share, to maybe have my, $1 billion+ exit, get bought out by Google. That's the dream. And then just retire to your own private island.
I think I saw they were like raising a little bit more money because of course they're running out of money, but at something like a $300 billion valuation, something like that.
Absolutely insane.
$300 billion.
When it comes to venture capital and the tech industry as a whole, I'm going to say ever since like the early 2000s, and for what it's worth, none of this is like financial advice. I'm very poorly versed in this. I'm just talking about some trends that I've noticed. If you look at Uber, if you look at like what happened with dating apps, if you look at Airbnb, a lot of like big apps or services out there on the internet started off very cheap and very good. And then they got more expensive and worse. There is a term, Hunter, you're going to have to bleep this one, enshittification. Enjoy that. There's another term for it. It's platform decay, where basically you put out the thing that's really good and you get as many people onto it as possible. We're seeing this with OpenAI keeps releasing these models for certain amounts of free for everybody. But you could pay to get like the more usage or the bigger tier or the whatever. There's paid versions for like Claude and what have you as well. But the companies are trying to get the models out there without being at a profit. And even when you said like, okay, inference is at a profit, but the training very extremely isn't, and the salaries of the people being used to train it are astronomical. If the company wants to be profitable, they need to make an overall profit. And I think that that's what's going to lead us to see, unfortunate as it may be, ads in the services. That's where we're going to see people being shuttled as much as possible to the really cheap, low version of the model. And frankly, when I say that, it sounds like, well, why would I want to use the worst version of a model that's available? For most people, for most uses, it doesn't matter. Oh, I need this email summarized. Okay, you don't need Claude Opus for that. Sonnet will do just fine. Haiku would do just fine. And I think certainly for myself, I want to use the biggest, most powerful model available to get the best results. But for most things, for most of the time, you don't need that. Claude Code. You know how I always talk about Anthropic. Everyone listening, love them. Using Claude Code, which I have been using more, and I have slightly better things to say about it than I used to, has a default mode in it now of use Opus, the really big fancy version of the model, for planning, and then use Sonnet, the cheaper, faster version of it, for doing. Yeah, sure, that makes sense. If you're going to do the big architectural thing, use the really extra capable model, and then use the daily driver, having been given a bunch of clearly defined tasks and to-do lists, and here's the relevant pieces of code or whatever the case may be. I don't think that we need to be fearing you got access to the lower intelligence, lower capability version of the model. But I don't want the ads. I really don't want those ads.
The companies that are funding all of these AI ventures, they're called venture investors or venture funds. And venture funds tend to operate on cycles. cycles investing in technology. The current cycle is definitely all around AI. These cycles tend to last 3 to 5 years, just looking back historically on them. And it's at about the 3-year mark, which is where we are now, when there is always a reckoning. So at the beginning, there's this new technology out and they have this thesis that it could change the world and they could make unlimited money. And so they're just back in everything, writing monstrous checks, grow, and it just starts growing. The checks get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then
I should have started a company 2 years ago.
It's at about that 3-year mark when all of a sudden they say, okay, stop. Let's take a look at our investments and let's see which ones are actually making money. And
because they know it takes time too. I started investing in something. It's going to be at least a couple of years before we figure out if it worked.
And it's going to be a very small percentage. It's going to be like 10%, 15% of all of their investments.
Well, they hope it's about 10. That's venture capitalists are usually looking for like a 10% or so company worked out in the end, right?
The rest of them, they basically will just cut off. They'll say, okay, we're done.
Yep.
No more money for any of you. And you will probably see over the next year a lot of AI startups closing down. The ones that weren't just doing it, all they're doing is spending money. And then they will double down for that next 2 years on the area that seems to be working and try to excel that and blow that out so they can actually get a return on those $300 billion valuations, which are insane. But that's what we can expect is a pretty dramatic culling of these things and everybody tuning the crank to figure out how can we actually extract money from this? How can we make these things profitable? I don't know if you saw Zuckerberg. By the way, did you get your $1 billion offer letter yet from Zuck? Did that come through?
Not yet. No. I was maybe expecting like a barbershop quartet and they show up at the door with one of those like the big
I want to start with that note, you know, when they
was that harmonica?
Yeah.
Yes.
Daniel, I can't do it. I wish I could do a barbershop quartet jingle for you right now. I would.
Well, maybe put it into Suno.
It's possible. It's possible. Anything is possible. But anyways, so Zuck's writing all these $1 billion checks. And then what happens over this last week? It's announced there's going to be some layoffs. And in the AI department, apparently the funds aren't quite working.
I don't know.
How does this happen?
I don't know. Zuckerberg very recently seemed to have gone like, look, everyone's been bullish on AI. Mark Zuckerberg seems to have been an entire running of the bulls of AI. I'm going to just write checks with too many zeros on them. Please come work for us. Super intelligence. And I think this is like not necessarily a course correction on that end. I think they're still going very strong for like their super intelligence type team. Rather, this is a company that has a lot of AI engineers and a lot of different sort of places. And I think they're cutting back on a bunch of the rest of it that isn't where their focus is. It doesn't look like he's gone and reversed course on what the focus is. Let's do super intelligence. It seems rather to be because we're pouring so much into this, oh shoot, we do actually have to pull back from elsewhere. And a bunch of these people have the same sort of job titles. And I think that's what we're seeing in the news. Will it stay like this? I suspect not. I think a few years down the line, almost like the venture capitalists, we're going to see, whether it be loudly announced or quietly, that super intelligence team might not be quite so many zeros at the end of the checks. It might not be quite as big of a team, but who knows?
And of course, Meta would never put ads into their super intelligence. Are you bullish on Meta? Would you invest in Meta? Put your investor hat on.
Oh, okay. So speaking of not giving investment advice, I've said this before on the podcast and I'll say it again. If you ever hear anything that sounds like financial advice from me of like stocks or whatever, do the exact opposite of what I'm doing. If you want to succeed in the stock market, don't do what I do.
Okay, so tell us what you would do with Meta so I can... Because by the way, and I wasn't going to bring this up, but you really did me wrong with Duolingo over last week where you were telling me about how wonderful it is and they're leveraging AI and the company's going to skyrocket.
I don't think I said that.
You heavily implied it.
Oh.
And then the stock market's dropped like 30%.
Well, it went up 30%. It just corrected back down. Yes,
and then you told me how great it was. And now it's down 30%.
I didn't say anything about you should invest in. I sure hope I didn't say you should invest in Duolingo.
I felt it was implied.
Again, if I ever even vaguely implied, there needs to...
So
Hunter, for one of the YouTube shorts, there needs to be the big red bar of like, do not listen to Daniel's advice in the stock market.
I need you to get me back to even. How do I play meta?
All right. Here's what I would do, which means I guess you guys should do the opposite. When it comes to ads, which basically runs the entire friggin' internet at this point, I see two major players. I see Google and I see Meta. And so since both of them are investing really, really heavily in AI, I haven't yet, but probably would put some money onto both of those, which means I guess they're about to crash and you all should dump any stock that you have. I don't know, man. Again, not financial advice. I really don't know what I'm doing in any of those spaces. But I will say ads run the internet. People are using large language models more for everything. Ads will we're considering it. Oh, I bet they're considering it. All right. We're going to see ads in all of the major players, which is also why open weights models will become ever more important. Yeah, we're just straight up going to see more. Just because Google used to have, here's the search results, and then here's the sponsored results up top / ads. And now we see the AI results and then the sponsored results and then the real results. Why wouldn't the AI results have the sponsored AI results, then the AI results, then the sponsored results, then the real results? That's going to happen.
It's all going to be native. There's going to be no sponsored results at the top. It's going to be integrated into the responses and in a way that you don't realize it. Just like we already have native ads on a lot of media. It's called native ads.
Where you just happen to see someone with like an ice cold, refreshing Coca-Cola that's on the desk while they're talking.
Watch the news.
Well, that's so weird. It happened to be just like perfectly positioned.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like, watch the news. There are things where they were paid by some medical company to talk about some new study came out about this revolutionary drug that's going to be on the market in 2 weeks. It's paid.
Meanwhile, you can see the $100 bills like out their back pocket.
And it's legal. And so they're going to do exactly the same thing in the world of AI.
1,000,000% sure.
And that's why I need just a little bit of investment to get me to the point.
Don't do it.
When it becomes self-aware. And then I start getting those UBI checks, which you've also promised me, Daniel. Those things better show up. I need my UBI check.
I think that's the way that we will eventually long-term get. I will say, though, before we get far away from it, when it comes to those AI results and the ads in them, it's going to start obvious. Oh, Coca-Cola or Chase Bank or what? Like, you're going to see the big name, like, sponsored AI result. This is really relevant to your thing. It wasn't. No, scroll. But just like we've talked about how bias implicit to the internet and the corpus of data that these models have been trained on, or state sponsored, like we want to, the Chinese models, especially in Chinese, don't tend to like talking about Tiananmen Square and any sort of implication about that. Think US politics and like, oh, Grok keeps getting fairly publicly lobotomized and like we're trying to make it fit a certain narrative, for example, why wouldn't you do the same thing, not just for politics, but for product placement? Why wouldn't Coca-Cola or Pepsi or, Quaker Oats or whoever, why wouldn't any of these companies, Coke, 1,000,000%.
Okay. All right. We can still be friends.
Why wouldn't any of these companies write out a big check to Anthropic or to Mistral or to Meta or to Google or whoever and say, when you next happen to be retraining a model, if you happen to give on those reinforcement learning examples, the thumbs up to the one that mention are your fine friends at Quaker Oats, that would be really keen, wouldn't it? And that way, it's not going to show up all the time. It'll be subtle. Someone happened to be talking about breakfast foods anyways, and Quaker Oats is the one that is just pushing, not hard, subtly, a little bit, or maybe very finely tuned to your specific psyche profile that Meta's, probably got. That's what we're going to see. It's going to start with very obvious ads, and then it's going to get way more subtle.
Well, speaking of biases, if people want to know all there is to know and really just listen to the absolute best podcast on the subject of the inevitable self-awareness, would you have any advice for them, Daniel?
No, because you shouldn't follow my financial advice. Wait, no, this isn't financial. This is podcast advice.
Yeah, you're an expert.
I am qualified. I'm an internationally recognized expert.
You're the chief co-host of one of the top
There's one person in another country who recognizes me, and so
awesome.
I'm an internationally recognized expert. I would say, of all of the various podcasts out there, They Might Be Self-Aware is the best one to go to.
You heard it here first, folks. Breaking news. Hit the subscribe button. Leave a like, leave us a comment, engage, and we shall engage back. We're on twice a week. And we enjoy connecting with all of you right here on...
They might be self-aware.